Hello everyone. Today I'm going to give you the rundown on all the essential things you'll need to start your journey as a hobbyist into the magical and expensive world of miniature war games. Hopefully this guide will help you not make some of the same mistakes I did and maybe save you some money in the process. First, of course, we need some cool models. For instance, say models from either Warhammer, Battletech, or whatever tabletop game catches your fancy. Remember, always follow the rule of cool. There are multiple games that fall under GW's IP, such as Warhammer 40k, Horus Heresy, Age of Sigmar, and Lord of the Rings, along with other games that people rarely play. Okay, cool. We have some cool models. Now let's talk about the essential tools every hobbyist needs. First is the most used tool of any hobbyist, the humble sprue cutters. There are many sprue cutters out there, some good, some that are meh, and some that are straight up godly and expensive. I myself use model railroad cutters. These work great for plastic sprues because they're tough since they were made to cut the metal track for model trains. I have been using the same pair for the past 4 years and they're still going strong after cutting loads of plastic and resin. And remember, cut a little bit above the sprue connection for the best results. Next up is the hobby knife, which we use to shave off plastic and remove mold lines. Also, don't forget to buy a stock of replacement blades because nothing is worse than starting a hobby project and realizing you don't have enough blades. This is probably one of the most used tools aside from sprue cutters. Sometimes the sprue cutters don't get all the plastic or resin off. Also, remember to be careful with the blade or you could end up with a trip to the ER. Now, of course, we need something to hold our models together, and for that, we need tons of different types of glue. Since we at least need something in our lives to be held together, some of the glues I use are super glue along with some super glue accelerant to make the drying times a lot faster. I should mention if you're working with Forge World, you can only use super glue since resin behaves different from plastic, and if it's a large model, get some JB Weld or JB Quick Weld for things like Titans and really chunky resin models. For plastic models, use plastic glue, more specifically Tamiya Extra Thin. This stuff is great for plastic models since it melts the connections between the parts for a very strong bond. And if you have some leftover Tamiya Extra Thin that you can't really use anymore, make some sprue goo. Just use some of the leftover Extra Thin and some extra sprues, and use it to fill those pesky gaps like on a Contemptor Dreadnought or anything else that has terrible gaps on it. Speaking of gap filling, get yourself either some green stuff or Vallejo plastic putty. This stuff is great for filling gaps that sprue goo can't fix. And you can also use the green stuff for sculpting if you're feeling brave. You should also get some clay tools if you do want to do sculpting, however. Now we arrive at one of my favorite tools, a pin vise with various drill bits to drill out barrels, pin holes for large models that need to be pinned. It's also very useful because it can be used for one of my mottos for wargaming. If I can magnetize it, I'm gonna magnetize it. If you want to save some money, buy some magnets. Heh, who's laughing now, bitches? I'm way ahead of the curve. I swear I don't randomly find magnets strewn across my house since I also have so many. Also, because I made this mistake when I first started, magnets can only be anchored in place with super glue. Now, you don't necessarily need a pin vise to drill out barrels because, believe me, drilling out 60 plus barrels in one sitting can get painful. But if you're gonna go magnet crazy like me, a pin vise is a valuable tool in any hobbyist toolkit. Now, I know a lot of us like having very nice edges and smooth surfaces on our models, and sanding sticks are the perfect tool for the job. And I use them all the time because they help hide the joins between resin and plastic, since I like to make my models look as clean as possible because nothing is more off-putting than a large barrel that isn't flush or some mold lines you really want to make sure are gone. Just make sure you use the correct sandpaper grit or else you may damage the model rather than make it look better. Okay, that's everything for the building side. Now on to the other part of miniature wargaming, painting. First things first, you're of course going to need various paint brushes. For things like dry brushing, cheap large makeup brushes work really well, and because they come in different sizes, are great for minis of all sizes too. For base coating and metallics, cheap paint brushes from Michaels or Amazon also do the trick, since metallics can ruin brushes really fast. For edge highlighting, freehanding, and writing text, get yourself one or two really nice sable brushes. Some examples are Winsor & Newton and Kolinsky Sable. You need brushes like this because a fine tip will always give you better results when edge highlighting those 40 tactical marines. Also, make sure to really take care of these brushes because they can get expensive. For brush care, get this. It's a big old tub of brush cleaner. Make sure your brushes are squeaky clean along with conditioning them. I have had this thing for 3 years and I have barely used any of it compared to the smaller versions, which I went through 2 of them in under a year. It is of course more expensive, but it saves a lot of money in the long run. Now for paints, I can't exactly tell you what to buy since we all have our own preferences, So experiment and try out different paint brands because the internet is a magical place. And if you're looking for similar colors, the internet has got you covered. Just don't ever buy any of GW's white paints, that stuff is usually shit. YouTube also has tons of painting guides out there for whatever army you play, so look at some of those guides to see if you like the colors other miniature painting YouTubers use. Now, when you do start painting your minis, you can either use a nice wet palette, or in my case, a redneck wet palette, which is just an old Tupperware, some parchment paper, and a paper towel. I use this because I don't want to worry about the sponge on a nice wet palette getting moldy or ruined by metallics. Next, make sure to get yourself a painting handle and some rubber gloves. These are great for painting because the oils from your hands or friction can rub some of the paint off. I know this from experience, and believe me, you will get random metallics on that nice paint job if you don't wear gloves. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention this earlier, but have some band-aids on hand when you're using a hobby knife, because you probably will cut yourself, because even I do after almost 4 years of Warhammer. Okay, that's all I can think of right now for all the hobby essentials you may need for your journey as a tabletop wargamer. If I think of anything else, maybe I'll do a short. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful or just like elaborate posts, don't forget to subscribe. Also, join the Discord server to show off your painting skills or even ask questions about Warhammer, along with you yourself sharing your hobbying knowledge with everyone else. Well, I gotta go now. I got a lot of Terminators to paint. A whole lot of Terminators.